On today's show, the Nets fall to the Suns in the shootout at Barclays Center and successfully utilize another back-to-back for tanking purposes. I'll offer my top takeaways from the game and Brooklyn's recent tank strategy on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the #1 sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. This show is 100% free on all those great platforms. And on today's episode, I'm going to be recapping Brooklyn's 126-117 loss to the Phoenix Suns on Monday night at Barclays Center. And the most significant part of this game for me was solidifying the fact that the Nets have really found what I view as a successful tanking vehicle in the form of back-to-backs. I'm going to get into the specifics of the game. It was a shootout. There was a lot that went into it, but this is another back-to-back. The Nets have dropped both games. And that has been one of the biggest reasons why they've been able to maintain pace in the tank race, because we know that the Nets haven't wanted to, dating back to the beginning of last season into the first half of this season. They don't want to just like blatantly hold guys out on a near nightly basis, as some other teams do in pretty shameless fashion. The Nets haven't wanted to fully commit to doing that. They've wanted almost, it seems like, some plausible deniability. So the way that the Nets have kind of sidestepped it has been by using back-to-backs. And you look at it, they've sat their top guys, mainly MPJ and Yegor Dioman, during every back-to-back this season. And as of late, the last 3 or 4 back-to-backs, the Nets have really found a strategy of how to kind of successfully tank both games by, instead of like holding MPJ and Yegor out in one game and then having them both play in the other, during the first half of the back-to-back, they'll hold out MPJ, and the last couple was MPJ and Drake Powell. And then in the second half of the back-to-back, they'll hold out Yegor, Cam Thomas, whoever else tonight. Day'Ron Sharpe didn't play in this game due to a throat contusion and an illness or something along those lines. So they've been able to kind of take both halves of the back-to-back to rest guys with each game. And because of that, the Nets have played in 7 back-to-backs this season. They've lost both games in 6 out of 7 back-to-backs. So that's 12 losses right there in back-to-backs, 13 if you include the one where they've split. So it has been a really effective way, especially as of late, for them to gain ground and maintain pace in the draft lottery standings. You look at where they're at now, they had that 7-3 stretch, and now they've lost a lot of games during this recent 13 or 14 game stretch. And, they're right up there. Like, they're getting up towards the top 3. I think they're in 5th right now. They're tied in the win column with the Kings, who are in 4th. So the Nets are trying to stay in that, 4 or 5 spot, if not push up into the top 3 of the draft lottery standings. And the main vehicle and way that they've done that has been back-to-backs. Maybe the trade deadline will factor into that. We're a few weeks away. I'll have plenty of more coverage of that. But the back-to-backs have been a way that they've done it, and this last back-to-back was yet another example of it. But getting into this game against the Suns, that the Nets lost in a shootout. They fell behind by 20 early. They clawed back, but ultimately they were not able to get over a hump. But this is the second straight game where the defense was really just abysmal. And the Nets were able to stay in it this game because their offense was very good for, large extended stretches, but they fell behind by 20, and they, cut it and made it a game late in the fourth quarter. I think it was a 4-point game with like 3 or 4 minutes left, but they weren't able to get over the hump. And the reason for that is their defense, which is just, kind of cratered since that, stretch during December where they had the best defense in the NBA. You look at it tonight, the Phoenix Suns shot 57% from the field and 51% from 3. And the Nets really just couldn't stop anything. I mean, like Dillon Brooks in this game, man, oh man. I mean, I know Dillon Brooks is having a season. He had himself a game tonight. He had 27 points. What was he from the field? 27 points on 8 of 15 from the field, 6 of 9 from 3, 5 of 5 from the free throw line. Devin Booker added 24 points. Colin Gillespie, 22 points. Mark Williams, 16. So it was just an across-the-board effort from the Phoenix Suns. They all really looked good offensively. But it was mainly, they did a ton of their damage behind the three-point line. The Phoenix Suns were 20 of 39 in this game from 3. And this is the second straight game the Nets have allowed their opponent to make 23s. The Bulls drained 23s against them on Sunday night in Chicago. And as I said, the offense really wasn't the issue for the Nets tonight. I mean, they shot 50% from the field. They made 15 threes. As I said, they actually fought back from a 20-point hold and make it a game late in the fourth quarter. Michael Porter Jr. What do you know? He sits out that Chicago game. They score 99 points against a defense that I wouldn't say is very imposing. And then, as it has been the case all season, he comes back and the offense just kind of picks up right where it left off. So the offense wasn't an issue. The Nets got back in the game because of their offense. They just couldn't get stops. And it's really been the story of their recent struggles, because the main factor in their success during that December stretch was that they had the number one defense in the league in December. Literally, it was a miraculous turnaround. And you look at it, they've kind of devolved back in this recent stretch, these last 11, 12, 13 games, to what we saw in the beginning of the season. And it's really just been kind of a tale of a few stretches from the Nets defense this season. You look at games, their first 19 games of the season, they were 29th in defensive rating, 122. Then their games 20 through 29, which was that December stretch, they had the best defense in the NBA, a 103.5 defensive rating. And then games 30 through 41, these last 11, they're back to 29th during that stretch. They have 120 defensive ratings. So it really just was that stretch in December where they played like the best defense in the league for an extended stretch, and that allowed them to win a lot of games. That was the fuel behind them having that 7-3 stretch. It was that their defense was keeping them in enough games, and then MPJ, Yegor, some of the other guys that they had contributing offensively was enough to get them over the hump late in those games. So you look at it like, it's going to raise the question, who are the Nets? Like, what are they defensively? Are they the team that we saw in the beginning of the season and the team that we're seeing now? Or are they closer to the team that we saw during that December stretch? And I think if you look at that December stretch where they had the best defense in the NBA, you look at the opponents, they had the Hornets, Bulls, Jazz, Pelicans, Mavs, Bucks, Heat, Raptors, 76ers, Wolves. So there's some good teams in there, but for the most part, it wasn't the toughest stretch of schedule. We knew that. There was a lot of sub-500 teams. They played other teams that were missing guys for injury, like the Bucks had no Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Heat had no Tyler Hero. The 76ers obviously missing guys. So you ask, what is the Nets defense this season? Are they the team we saw in the beginning and the team that we're seeing now that is one of the worst defenses in the NBA, or are they closer to that elite defense that we saw in December? I would say, personally, I think they're closer to what we're seeing right now. I think that stretch in December, I don't think they're one of the worst defenses in the NBA. I think they showed that in December because they did play good defense against some good teams. But I do think that they are a below average defense, and they are going to be for the majority of the season. And these recent games have been more like what we saw early in the season. Like, you look at this tonight, you look at this last game against the Bulls and all the games before this over the last week or two. It's miscommunications. It's guys falling asleep off the ball. It's guys surrendering advantages at the point of attack, not finishing possessions with rebounds, not sprinting back in transition, all of those things. And, I said it early in the year, like when the Nets started 0-7, they had one of the worst defensive ratings in NBA history. To begin a season, it was like 129 defensive rating. I said it then that I didn't think that the Nets have the personnel to be a good defensive team. You look at it, they really don't have like a stopper or an elite defender at the point of attack. They have a few like decent ones. They have obviously some decent rim protection with Nick Claxton back there, but like they don't really have the personnel to be a very good defensive team, in my opinion. I think that December stretch was a little bit more of an outlier, but I do think that, that did show that they can be better than what they are, showing right now and what they showed during the beginning of the season. So their ability to bounce back from that is going to be a huge storyline to monitor, because the only success that the Nets have had this season, extended success, was really a product of their defensive, capabilities and their defensive want to and their defensive engagement and all the things that they did during that stretch. Were they able to regain that? If they are, they could start being a little bit more frisky and competing with some better teams. But if not, it's going to be a long second half of the season. And the defense, as I said during the beginning of the year, could end up being, their biggest tank weapons. So we'll see how that plays out. But want to talk about some of the individual performances that we saw during this game, particularly Michael Porter Jr. and Nolan Traore, both of which had really interesting games, in my opinion. I'll get into what they did and what Nets fans should be looking for them moving forward when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, new year, new systems. This is a time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo. the smarter way to run your business communications, because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal, and it works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free plus 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Coming back from the break, continuing today's Locked On Nets episode, recapping Brooklyn's loss to the Phoenix Suns. And I want to talk about two of the guys that I thought had the most notable performances in this game for the Nets. And that's always going to start with Michael Porter Jr., who in this game put up 23.6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 turnovers, 10 of 23 from the field, and 2 of 10 from 3. And that's obviously not one of MPJ's best games, but it's not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. Like 23, 6, and 4 on 10 of 23 from the field. Obviously, 2 of 10 from 3 isn't up to his standards. But the fact that Michael Porter Jr. is able to put up a stat line like this with the shot diet that he had in this game, if you go back and watch the shots that he took in this game, it's just frankly ridiculous. In the last few games, like I've talked about it, same thing in the Bulls game, same thing in that Pelicans game. Like, I think the shot diet these last 3 games has been particularly ridiculous, but it's always ridiculous. And like this performance tonight, the fact that he's able to put up, 23 and 4 assists on 10 of 23 shooting with the shot diet that he has is just pretty insane. And it's a testament to what an insane shot maker he is. But I do think that these last 3 games, we have seen the shot diet trend even a little bit more difficult and a little bit more ridiculous than what we've seen for extended stretches of the season. And I think a big part of that is I think defenses are getting a lot more used to the offensive system that Jordi Fernandez has put in place for Michael Porter Jr. It's a lot of him playing, off the ball. It's a lot of operating with him through split actions where he gets, these slips to the rim. He gets these high-low passes. He obviously can curl off pin downs and do all these things. And I think that defense with added tape are getting a little bit more in tune to what the Nets are trying to do with MPJ. And he's obviously not a guy who's known for like his twitchiness as a ball handler, his ability to be a self-creator on the ball. So with that, I think the looks are going to get a little bit more difficult, and they have been pretty difficult over these last, 3 or so games. And despite that, MPJ is still shooting like near 50%, putting up, 23, 25, 28-point performances. So it's a testament to what a ridiculous shot maker he is. And I asked Jordi Fernandez after the game whether he thought MPJ's shot diet has been trending a little bit more difficult, in these recent games. And he said, not really. He said, like, you look at MPJ's 10 of 23 from the field, 2 of 10 from 3 tonight. He had a few shots that rimmed out. So if a few shots that rimmed out go in, he's above 50%. He's, 23 or 26 points. It looks like a really good performance. So, it's a testament to him. But Jordi Fernandez did say that he feels like MPJ, he needs to, kind of continue to work and continue to evolve the offense to get MPJ easier looks as defenses adjust. That's going to be a big conversation, for the Nets and also for Michael Porter Jr. Like, we're 3 weeks away from the trade deadline, and like he's starting to regress shooting-wise a little bit, not too much, but part of that is the added attention that defenses are showing him. So we're going to get closer to the trade deadline. The main question is going to be, do the Nets hold on to MPJ? Do they move him? And I think a factor into that equation is going to have to be, as you get into the second half of the season, the more tape that these defenses get on MPJ and what Jordi Fernandez is doing to design the offense around him, the better they're going to get at defending him, the more difficult it's going to become for him. So in the second half of the season, if defenses have this more tape, they're making things more difficult, and he comes back to earth a lot from a shooting perspective. Does that impact his trade value going into the offseason? That's a question and a factor to think about, and it's something definitely to monitor moving forward. But next guy I want to talk about is Nolan Traore, who I thought had another really good performance in this game. You look on Sunday against the Bulls, Nolan had 15 points. That was a career high. He made 4 threes. That was also a career high. And tonight, he has 10 points, 2 assists, 0 turnovers, 3 of 8 from the field, and 1 of 3 from 3 in 22 minutes. And, not the flashiest stat line, but I think that this was another high-level performance from Nolan Traore by his rookie standards. Like, you look at him, he played 22 minutes in this game. He handled the ball a lot. he had 0 turnovers. And that is a testament to Nolan's growth, because when you saw Nolan playing in the G League during the preseason and his NBA opportunities early this season, he did not look confident as, a ball handler. He did not look confident as a distributor, and he certainly did not look confident taking shots from anywhere on the floor. And tonight, I thought that confidence was kind of oozing out of him. And while he was, it was only 10 points and 2 assists, 3 of 8 from the field, I thought that you saw his capabilities. I thought you saw that his confidence, and I think 0 turnovers in 22 minutes really speaks to that. And him playing a pretty, good defensive team in the Phoenix Suns. Like, they have a lot of switchable guys. They have a lot of guys who have some, size. They have a lot of smaller guards who can press out and pressure you on the perimeter like a Colin Gillespie, like some of these other guys. And I think Nolan's ability to handle that pressure was pretty impressive. And then you look at some of the shots and some of the plays that Nolan made in this game. Nolan had a play in the first half. Like, we've heard all about Nolan's speed. We've heard about him being a blur. He had a play in the first half that I think really exemplified that, where he got the ball at the top of the key. He had Grayson Allen on him on a switch, and he kind of hang dribbled to his right side and then crossed over to Grayson Allen to his left and went downhill and just scored like a blur. And he spun Grayson Allen around like a top on that crossover. And it got some oohs and ahs from the Barclays Center crowd. And I'll tell you, I watched it on the broadcast, but I also had watched it in person, and it looked even faster in person. Like, it was a stop on the dime with his right foot, crossover to his left, and like that, in the blink of an eye, he was downhill and scoring. And Grayson Allen didn't even know what hit him. Like, he did not have a chance. And that is, what you see with Nolan, like sometimes, like you see that ability to get downhill. You see some of the advantage creation that he has. He has some other plays tonight where he got the ball in like a dribble handoff at the top of the key, turned the corner, drove downhill really fast, got past the big man. I think it was Mark Williams, finishes an and one with his right hand. Another one where he blows by someone. He kind of Nash dribbles around the baseline. He finds Danny Wolf for a corner 3 on a relocation, and Danny drains it. So overall, I think just you're seeing the advantage creation with Nolan. There's a lot of things that he needs to improve on that I've spoken about, whether it's adding strength physically, whether it's 3-point shooting, whether it's some of that stuff. But I think that you're seeing the advantage creation play at the NBA level, and you're also seeing the poise and his ability to kind of handle the ball, initiate offense, conduct an NBA offense, and not look overwhelmed. And that's something, if you talk about the ball handling ability, the Nets drafted 3 guys that were perceived as point guards with Yegor, Nolan, and Ben. And I'd say that Yegor seems more like he's going to be a wing. Nolan and Ben are the point guards. But out of those 3, and if you include Drake Powell in the conversation, Nolan is by far the most comfortable initiating offense. And I think as he gets added reps, you're seeing him start to stack days and get more confident. And I think that you certainly saw that in this game. So nice to see from him. Last couple of guys I want to touch on is Drake Powell, who I thought had another solid performance for him. And also Zaire Williams, who got back into the rotation after an extended absence and was the biggest spark plug, I would say, for the Nets this game off the bench. So what did I see from those guys, and what should Nets fans be looking for from the team adjustment-wise moving forward? I'll get into all that when I close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, look, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode, recapping Brooklyn's loss to the Phoenix Suns. And the last couple of guys I want to close this out on are Drake Powell and Zaire Williams. And starting with Drake, I thought that this was a good performance from Drake tonight. Like, the Nets struggled during his minutes, but I don't think that was his fault. I think that the Suns were just really hot with their starting unit. Drake started this game alongside Terrence Mann, and the Suns starters, they caught a heater from 3. And, I don't think it was Drake's fault. I think Drake is one of the guys, alongside maybe Nick Claxton, who sticks out defensively and seems to be consistently doing his job. But outside of that, the Nets are just struggling as a defensive team in this one. But you look at Drake in this game, he had 11 points, 3 assists, 1 turnover, 4 of 7 from the field, and 3 of 7 from 3. And I think that Drake's jump shot looked really good in this one. I think that it was a really nice thing to see because we have seen Drake struggle, from three in recent games. I think he's down to like 31% from three on the season. But in this game, he came out and on the first, I think it was the second and third possession of the game, the Suns were kind of giving him a little bit of space and daring him to shoot a little bit. They were starting to short close on him. They were giving him a little space when he had the ball in the perimeter, and he was letting them fly, and he hit a few. As I said, he was 3 of 6 from three. He had another mid-range jumper where he was given a little space. So I think that the jump shooting, coming around and the jump shooting looking like it can be somewhat consistent and somewhat real, and his willingness to take them through struggles and punish guys when they're daring him to shoot, I thought that was a real positive from Drake. And then the defense, we all know that, what he does defensively, like even though the Nets really struggled in this game, I think that you see Drake doing the right thing consistently as you do some of these other guys like a Nick Claxton. Another guy who I think was doing the right things defensively in this game was Zaire Williams. Guys doing the right thing defensively, that was, a dime a dozen in this game. And Zaire, this was his first game back from an extended absence due to illness. He had missed the Nets last 4 or 5 games or something like that. And he made an immediate impact upon returning to the rotation. He had 15 points, 2 rebounds, 2 steals tonight. He was 4 of 7 from the field and 3 of 6 from 3. And he was a plus 12 in 23 minutes off the bench. That was the best of any Net tonight. And I'd say that I think Zaire Williams' defensive activity really made a difference in this game. I mean, he was all over the court, at least trying to bother opposing guys, where a lot of the other Nets seemed content to sit back, let guys shoot threes, let guys initiate offense comfortably. I think that Zaire was, kind of flying around. He was kind of doing his thing, and he's had, obviously, a little bit of an extended layoff here with that illness, but he came back, and he looked like a guy who was eager to contribute on the defensive end of the floor, and it looked like a guy who was taking some pride defensively, which is not something that you can say for a lot of guys, in this game tonight and also in this recent stretch. And the Nets have been struggling him. And then offensively, Zaire 4 of 7 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3. And he's really started to play better, over his last 5 games. You saw there was a game last month where he really struggled. Jordi Fernandez called him out. He benched him in the following game and took him out of the rotation and said that he needed more from Zaire Williams. And since then, I think you've really seen Zaire Williams answer the call. And over his last 5 games, he's at 11.5 points on 52, 44, 91 shooting split. So obviously small sample size, but with the activity, with the length, with the things that Zaire can do defensively, I don't think that he's this outstanding defender, but I think that he has the measurables and he has the want to and the activity and the hustle to make things difficult on that end for some opposing guys, as we saw him do last season. So you add that, and if he can start shooting the 3 consistently, that's a big if. You have, the makings of a guy that can be, I think, a nice end of bench piece. Like you talk about Zaire's future in the NBA, I think that he's too limited offensively to be a rotation guy for a playoff caliber team because, as I said, I don't really think that he's like this elite or high-level defender. I think that he can get by with effort and his measurables and length and some of that stuff. So I think that he can be, good if he puts his mind to it. But then offensively, he's never really been a good 3-point shooter, and we know when he puts the ball on the ground, he's extremely limited from that end. So from that perspective, but if he gives that kind of effort defensively, if the 3-point shooting comes around, I do think that he can be a guy who has a role in the NBA long-term. Is that going to be a rotation role for like a playoff caliber team? I'm skeptical, but I do think that he can be, a valuable guy to have on your bench throughout the course of a season when you need somebody to come in, give that kind of effort, somebody who can at least shoot somewhat from 3 and has the size and measurables to do some of the things that the Nets want to do defensively. I do think that he has that potential, and I do think that he's showing it in these recent games. So that's nice to see. But that's all I got for you guys on today's episode of Locked On Nets. If you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy my content, take a second, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you could do to engage is much appreciated. But that's got a day off, and they're going to be back on Wednesday, back in action on Wednesday at Madison Square Garden against the reeling Knicks. So coverage of all that and more when I'm back tomorrow, talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.